Hello and welcome. I'm Garima, your host for today's webinar. Thank you for joining us today. With the corona outbreak, some dramatic changes have taken place in the global oil and gas community, not just with respect to the business, but also from a career perspective. We are all adjusting. The younger generation is all the more nervous and overwhelmed with too much going around them. Just at the time when they were planning to begin their career in the industry, they have no idea where to start from and what to do. This is exactly why we wanted to come together with you to discuss the career challenges that come along with COVID-19 and the way forward. Joining me on the dais is Sofija, Human Resources Director at the Energy Dais, and David, Associate Director, Cost and Technology Group, IHS Markit. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Just a quick note for our audience. We would like this webinar to be as interactive as possible. This webinar is for you. Please do share your thoughts with us and ask questions. Also, we will be putting up polls and short surveys during the discussion. There will be a Q&A by the end of the discussion where you can put across your questions for our speakers. If by any chance there's any technical glitch, please bear with us. We will fix that soon. Don't worry about it. Let's begin then. More than anything, David, I feel there is a need to simplify the conversation first. How are you perceiving this current situation?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, there's a couple things to keep in mind. The first is that obviously the perception that people can have of an event can be very different from the reality. But then there's also a saying that perception is reality. So whatever it is you feel, that's how things are. In my line of work, we try and be as objective as we can based on the data. And so I'm going to attempt to share my screen quickly just to give everyone an idea of honestly just how things are, right? Because we don't want to be completely doom and gloom, but we have to be honest about this. So if we just take a look at what, so my company puts together forecasts essentially and outlooks. And you can see that if we look at, this is just for the US, but if you looked at the global picture, you'd probably see something similar. You can see that the rig count in the US took a nosedive. The frac count in the US took a nosedive, and most likely any recovery won't happen for the next 4 or 5 years. And even then will not reach anywhere near historical levels. So I think the first thing we have to be honest with ourselves about is that, yes, things are not great. They will continue to not be great for the next couple of years. But I do think, and I'm sorry,
it's okay.
I'm having some trouble here. I do believe that the point of this talk is to say that even though we have to accept things aren't great now, that does not mean there are not opportunities for people or that they will continue to be bad forever. That's not the case.
Right. Sofija, what are your thoughts on the current situation right now?
Well, as we are all aware, we are trying kind of to live our ordinary lives in these quite extraordinary circumstances. I mean, the whole world has been put on hold. Many economies are suffering. Our industry is suffering. And then I'm sure as well, like all of us, we have been at some point, feeling doubtful, feeling anxious, confused as well, and curious where this is leading us to. And, how this new reality that we are entering is affecting our personal and as well professional life, in job market itself. So we have been through many crises in the world, and I guess the best lesson we can take out and the best thing we can learn from those is that we need to adapt. We need to be, as David said, honest with ourselves. We need to evaluate our skills, our weaknesses and strengths, and to see how we can work on them with the tools that are available so we can get, to a place where we want to be.
That's very true, Sofija. I think we are all trying to adjust to these unprecedented times and new realities. And if I talk about the specifics, David, what do you think the COVID pandemic means exactly for one's career?
Wow. I think people have probably already written pages about this and will write pages more. Certainly, this is going to be something that everyone remembers in 60 years' time, 70 years' time. You're going to see a lot of things refer back to this as the inflection point. From the point of view, generally speaking, of people's careers, unfortunately, a lot of people are being laid off and will have been laid off. So it's going to be a very tangible time in people's lives. I think more generally, though, it's going to cause people to think about what they were doing before, what they could be doing in the future, what they'd like to do, how they can better prepare to do that. And certainly in oil and gas, that's going to be the case, because I think that what this is showing people is that they can live doing a lot less and with a lot less. And so if you look at the drop in demand that we've seen, I mean, we're talking 20 or 30 million barrels extra on the market than there needs to be. The question is, does that come back? And if not, what does that mean for the positions that are out there? So I think if before, great crew change, and even just generally, the message was we need to do more with less, I think now it's going to be even more. We need to do more with less, and you need to start doing that even earlier in your career than you thought before. So it is tough, but it also means tremendous opportunity for those who were able to find the specific problems caused by COVID-19 and address them the most efficiently.
So, Sofija, my same question is for you. How are you looking at this crisis from the career perspective?
I mean, all of the industries have been affected by COVID-19 in one way or another. And then for us, it's a bit challenging. We are dealing with pandemic, but as well like with low oil prices. And especially at these times, since we are all facing with this pandemic, this size of pandemic for the first time, it's important to be to collaborate for companies and as well like for individuals and to support each other. And for us as well, like at the end of the year, what we have been doing over the past few weeks, we have been interviewing many executives and CEOs across the world in different sectors: engineering and construction, oilfield services, suppliers, manufacturers, exploration, production, trying to understand how they're coping with it, how it is affecting their businesses, and what kind of opportunities they're finding in this crisis. Because it's important to share their best practices and lessons that they learn so it can help other individuals and companies to navigate better through this. And one of the feedbacks was quite obvious is this going to mean for many companies that they have to go through certain rebirths because of this crisis. It means that they will be restructuring their operations. It means that they're going to be restructuring their workforce. David mentioned many layoffs happened already. And it means also from our side, from HR people, we'll have to be dealing with new ways and methods of hiring people. And also many companies have reported that the ones that have been investing in digitalization and the ones have been using technology, they reported the competitive edge over others in the market. So definitely, I mean, some of the companies have put on hold their hiring processes. Some of them even put on hold like training and development of current employees, because if those trainings require face-to-face interaction, that's not possible at the moment. So we're going to see a lot of changes. So definitely who has been investing over years into their workforce in terms to evaluate their skills and like their capabilities now will be an advantage, because a lot of cross-skilling will be needed, a lot of retraining of the employees. So it's important, people who are now looking for a job, of course, for your career, it means that you need to continue looking for a job, even though in these circumstances. For students, for example, there are companies, consulting companies who are giving advices to students to help them with their career. I'm sure you have it as well, like in your universities, your advisors. But to continue searching and as well like to continue looking for those skills that will be needed, because to learn new skills is going to be it's vitally important.
Yes, right. I think you've made some great points here. We need to look for the bright spots in this whole situation. And David, if we talk about the previous downturns, how do you think this crisis compares to all those events in the past?
That is a great question. Oil and gas is, even in the relatively short time I've been in the business compared to some people, they'll tell you booms and busts are just a part of it. I think this one is different because it's caused by a tremendous, a huge drop in demand by something that no one's ever seen. So I think with my limited knowledge of kind of medical history, the Spanish flu of 1918 was the last time this happened. That was 100 years ago. The world was nowhere nearly as interconnected, wasn't consuming nearly as much. And so we have this happening, this large decrease in forced decrease in demand, which is really causing people to evaluate how much of what I was doing before do I need going forward. And then this is happening on top of the, I don't want to call it a debate because to me it's settled science, but it's happening on the heels of all the discussion around climate change and what we need to do. So we had, prior to this, we had a big conversation around here's what we need to have happen. COVID-19 came at a time where it's making those things happen. So now the question is, how much does it come back? Because if not, if people travel less, if people commute to work less, clearly there's always some baseline demand of oil and gas that's going to be needed. But you have to ask yourself the question, what happens to demand, and really what happens to demand 50 years from now? So if I'm just graduating college now, am I assured of a career in oil and gas by the time I retire? And I think more than ever, because of the severity of this downturn, that question becomes a lot more nebulous to answer.
Right. And David, what do you think about the students who are graduating this year? How relevant and how difficult is the time for them basically at this moment?
Yeah, so look, I graduated college 14 years ago, but I still remember what it was like finding a job. It was a different time. This was when Facebook had just launched. The Apple phone hadn't launched. So it was not that long ago, but really from a point of view of technology, it really was. But I'm also sensitive to the fact that I missed by 2 years the Great Recession of 2008. And now 10 years later, we have something that people are calling the Great Depression. So this is almost unprecedented. And if we really think, okay, every decade do we have to go through something like this, it's very tough. Here's what I'll tell you though. As long as there is money changing hands somewhere, there's opportunity, right? As long as there is a functioning economy somewhere, there is something for you to do. Because you now have access to all these technology tools. I mean, I think back to what I didn't have as an engineering student. I didn't have 3D printers. I didn't have access to online marketplaces. Anytime you're looking for a job, really what you're looking to do is solve someone's problem, right? So think about, there's money changing hands. There's many more problems now than there were even 2 months ago. That means tremendous opportunity for you to position yourself as someone who identifies problems and solves problems. And if you can do those things and put your solutions in front of the right people, you'll almost find that the job opportunities come to you rather than you having to throw applications into an online black hole and hope people get back to you.
Right.
So huge challenges, huge opportunities.
Right. Sofija, would you like to add something to this?
Well, definitely. Like now we have these tools available for us. And as David said, like before when he was looking for a job, it was quite different. And now we should utilize the platforms that we have on our disposal in the best way and effective way to expand as well like our community, to find out what's happening in the other parts of the world, like what's happening in Alberta and Canada, what's happening in Texas, in India, in Korea. So you have all this information at your disposal. So it's basically on you how you're going to utilize them. And of course, like expanding your network and gaining more insights about what they have been doing clearly can give you an idea as well, like how you can better position yourself and what kind of skills you need to acquire.
Right. And as you talked about better positioning ourselves, how important do you think is the role of social media here? What would you advise the students regarding their online presence per se?
Well, definitely it's very important, especially at these times. We can only communicate with each other virtually. When you think about it, like online became our new outside. And everybody is online at these times. So before, as David was saying, like when you're looking for a job, of course you would be using it nowadays as well. Like before the crisis, before this pandemic, you would be using these platforms, but as well, like you would go to networking events, to conferences, job fairs. So you would approach people, introduce yourself and get some new insights, right? But now, considering that we are all limited to this like virtual space, we really have to learn how to use them in our favor and efficiently. And to build a personal brand, of course, it requires some time, but, like you can start from, it's different for people who have been in the industry. They already have some established networks, and for those ones, like who are just graduating. But there's so many available resources online that you can, like learn some tips. And definitely now is the time, to experiment with that. What works for you, how to expand your network, and seeing as well like what other influencers in the industry are doing. So basically you can copy as well like something from their side in terms of how they are engaging with the audience. And through these platforms, you have the access to like much wider knowledge, basically whatever in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there are a lot of like Facebook and LinkedIn groups where you can be a part of, and you can engage, ask questions, ask advices from people who have been in the industry, so they can share some useful information with you. And from my point of view as a human resources director, but also as someone who has a sales background, because before I became HR, I was our director of sales for a project in Middle East. Mm-hmm. And I have been receiving many CVs on LinkedIn, especially even before this crisis. But most of the people would only send me their CV, and they would just say that they are looking for a job without any understanding and knowledge what actually the energy here, or at that time the oil and gas here, is doing. Mm-hmm. So I would strongly advise people and students not to do that. First, like there are some basic things. Like have your appropriate profile picture, have your profile information complete and accurate. But then also when you are approaching people now through a LinkedIn, you need to make a list for the companies, like that you're doing research. Like you do research about them and look at this process as a sales transaction. Mm-hmm. So they might be, like look at them as your potential clients. So you are offering them your capabilities, your skills, what kind of value you can bring to their company, and how you can contribute to further development. So that's why it's essential, like to do the research. And I would say don't only focus on their website, but as well, like use this LinkedIn and social media and connect with, like their employees or ex-employees. So you're going to get better information about what kind of people they're looking for, what is the company culture, and you're going to understand that in a better way. Because if you send this kind of like personalized message to them, more likely these people will reply to you and try to help. And I do remember, like some people will tell me that they send a message to the CEO of the company. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we need to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. So if you're the CEO of a company that has thousands and thousands of employees, more likely you won't, like you're going to miss some messages on LinkedIn. So that's why, like identify people who are working in HR department or in department where you would like to work, and then connect with them. Mm-hmm. And another thing, especially, like for everyone now, like to build a network, like to start working on your profile, to create posts that will show your expertise in a certain area, and as well like to curate someone else's post. And if you do all of these things right, don't get discouraged if you do not receive a reply or like you receive a rejection. These times are hard also on companies. But what is important, like to be patient, and especially these times to be persistent. So keep on engaging with those connections, keep on engaging with the audience that you have, your network on LinkedIn, because they're going to be like a higher chance when they start hiring again, that they will remember you, or they will hear about another opportunity that might be, like useful for you, so they can pass it over.
Right.
And during this like job search, I would advise people also, like to be flexible. Maybe it's not going to be possible to get your dream job straight after university, but maybe it's going to be something else that can open other doors for you that you wouldn't think of in the beginning.
Right, Sofija.
Yeah.
Yes,
if I could just kind of work off of that. So with regards to social media, I think really what you have to do when you're looking for a job, you have to stop thinking about it as I'm just looking for a job. And this is something that I've only realized. I didn't realize this coming out of university. I mean, this is something I've had to learn. But when you are looking for a job, you are selling yourself. You are a business. And so if you look at it that way, a lot of the strategies start to make a lot more sense. So when you look at social media, that's just not you blasting out opinions. That's you creating content. We call that inbound marketing, right? You create content so that people come to you. I mean, think of an example of when you've read a blog post or seen a promotional video, and you've been inclined to say, oh, that's interesting, I'm going to sign up for that. That's exactly what you guys did to broadcast this webinar, right?
Right.
So if you can get in the habit of thinking of yourself as creating content to attract people, that's a huge thing. Just having that insight will help you out. I think the second thing to remember, though, is that companies, when they hire, what they're looking to do, again, they want people that solve their problems, but really what they want is they want to lower the risk as much as possible in making a hire, because it's expensive to hire someone. Sometimes it can be hard to let them go. You're introducing an unknown into a team that might be functioning very well. So the more you can decrease the risk of them hiring you in terms of what type of a person you are and can you do the work, you're 90% of the way to getting the job. And that's what social media and content creation specifically does, because it shows the person that's looking at you that, hey, this person understands the business. This person is articulate. I mean, I think I'm assuming we're talking to a technical audience. I have a technical training, but I do so much more than technical work now. So if you can show that you're articulate, you can put your ideas down in a constructed manner on paper, that's huge. But then you're also showing people that you have the confidence to put a stake in the ground and put your opinions out there. And that doesn't happen with the first tweet. It doesn't happen with the first 100 tweets. I've written probably hundreds of posts and articles, and only now am I starting to see the return off of that. But the point is that you can never get to that point, and you can never get better if you don't start. So what I would recommend to everyone, because I mean, this is something we could also talk about for hours, but tell yourself, okay, I need to put myself out there. Really think about what it is that you want to portray about yourself. Think about what your endpoint is, and then say, okay, I'm going to do 1 tweet a day, 1 post a week, whatever it is, and just be methodical about it. And hopefully, if you start today, by the time that we hopefully go back to some semblance of normal, you'll have gotten your momentum going, and then the opportunities will start to come to you afterwards.
Right, David. I think both of you made this very important point that it's not only important to network, but also engage with people and compliment them on what they are doing. It's also about them, as much as we try to show them who we are.
But also be mindful about those, like engagements and as well as comments. They do make sense and that they are relevant, like those posts.
What I would suggest, just to start getting into the habit, is maybe, and Sofia's right. I mean, we have to put ourselves in other people's shoes. I mean, I get messages from people looking for jobs and referrals, and I want to help them, but I can't help everyone just for any number of reasons, right? But do start commenting on people's posts. I think just a skill to have is trying to identify problems. So you don't have to comment on people's posts. You can solicit feedback, right? So say, look, I'm out of university. Here's my view of the top 3 problems and solutions. That's important. We have to have solutions as well, facing the oil and gas industry, for example. Mm-hmm. What do you all think, right? And get a discussion going, right? And then next time someone posts about something that's going on in their industry, say, hey, that's something interesting you've identified. Here's another problem I think you might be having. What do you think, right? So interaction is important, but the right type of interaction is more important. And that begins with the identification of the problems and the solutions you might have to those problems.
Right, David. That brings me to my next question, David. How would you suggest the students to go about their job search at this moment? That's a very big concern for them right now.
Yeah, so my situation is different. I understand than it is back in school, but I would say this. Again, always keep in mind that if there's money changing hands, there's opportunity. I mean, oil and gas is in trouble, but companies have not shut down completely. As Sofija was saying earlier, you can't just blast resumes at people. You are a business, and in a business, your job is to match your supply of skills, of knowledge, to the demand that's out there. So the first thing I would do before just saying I want a job is, okay, what kind of job do I want? What is my skill set? What problems do I think I can solve? Very importantly, right? So can I calculate faster than someone else? Do I understand reservoir theory, but I can also write a program to put that, to make that more efficient? Well, what are the problems that I specifically can solve? Then make a list of companies where you think they might be having those problems. And then to go with what Sofija was saying, reach out to people, say, hey, go find them on LinkedIn, find the hiring manager. Don't say anything, just follow them. See what they're saying, right? Just listen. Just set up a list of companies you think whose problems you can solve, and then just listen. Once you've listened for a while, then just start reaching out and then see where it goes. But I think that if the one thing not to do, because we could put a long list together of things to do, but the one thing not to do is say, I need a job and I'll just send my resume out to whoever's hiring, because that will lead to very low success rates and very high levels of frustration. So it's much better to get a plan together and be methodical up front than be much more random about it and get discouraged very quickly.
Right. Sofija, as we are aware that so many people around the world are working from home for the very first time, and it's not the same for everyone. Some people are finding it very challenging, and like if I talk about myself, I am loving it. But if I talk about some of my other friends, they are not. They are even a lot of them are saying that, I'm depressed. I cannot stay inside the house for so long. What would you say to them?
Well, there are, as we were talking about, challenges and opportunities, in this situation on both sides, on the employer side, but as well like employee side. And definitely, this remote working is quite dependent and unique to someone's circumstances. But people, there's many different views on this. And what I could see around myself and as well read about it, many people have been reporting feeling lonely, isolated. They had a difficulty to manage their time, a difficulty to communicate with their colleagues as well. And not to forget about parents who are now have to deal on responsibility towards kids, but as well homeschooling at these times. So, to make it easier on employees and as well employers, it's quite essential to have a consistent communication from top management, managers, supervisors in a timely and a transparent manner, because that's something that contributes to performance of employees, but as well to their well-being. And there was a study actually, they have done it recently, Pink Petro in collaboration with University of Texas and some other organizations, and they gathered a group of more than 400 energy workers, and they were asking them about COVID-19 effects. How did their employers react to this situation? And one of the interesting figures for me, it was that 37% out of these 400, more than 400 people said that they are experiencing during these times problems with sleep or lack of sleep. Either it's because they have increased workload due to virus, or difficulty to manage and conflict between these family and work responsibilities, or as well feelings regarding job insecurity, especially at these times. So definitely well-being of employees affects their performance in the long term, of course. And what kind of opportunity, for employer side, I see from this crisis is that, of course, when this happened, priority of every employer was health and safety of their employees. But I don't think it's enough only thinking, our employees are negative to COVID-19, so that's great. But they have to start thinking about their mental health, because it does affect performance at the end. And there were, in our industry, we have great examples. For example, BP, what they have been doing, they have certain structures in place that, help assist employees in this regard, and as well, it's open to family members. So I hope that companies can take this example and implement it, of course, according to their own resources, and that this initiative is something to stay, because people want to work for companies that take care about them. Mm-hmm. And when you mention, that you like it and then some of your friends not, it's same. I would say, we have different groups of people that are experiencing this. So we have people who are living alone or living with their partners. So they say that they're more productive this way, and that they have more time for themselves, to exercise, to learn new skills, to deal with their hobbies. But then we have people who are having young children. And how are you going to explain to a kid that is 3-4 years old that you cannot dedicate all your attention to them, because they don't understand the concept of work. So I think this situation comes hardest to those people. It's most difficult because maybe they're feeling as well like with guilt. They are trying to maintain the role of a good employee, but as well like a good parent. And then we have as well like people who are taking care of their parents at the moment. So I mean, like for me personally, I think the combination of both would be good, because I do like working from home, but I also like engaging with my colleagues and spending time. But definitely, you know, we don't have that challenge anymore to commute, to deal with that hassle. So we can save time and energy on that side. Definitely.
Yes, exactly.
So, you know, another thing is that a lot of people said that now when they're working from home, when their home is their office, they are experiencing, you know, like this difficulty to make a boundary between these two. So that's another thing, you know, like to think of, because I guess we are working from home. So if there is still work to be done, so why not working until you go to sleep? You know, like you feel useful as well, like, and you're finishing things. So I think for all of us, you know, like for people who are experiencing like troubles with this, it's important. And for the ones who enjoy this, maybe someone from the audience can share some of their experiences and how they are coping and how they are, you know, like managing their work and life balance. But I believe it's important to, you know, like establish a routine. You have a plan of your daily activities, and then you have time for yourself, for work, breaks, for your family, for your hobbies, to do something for yourself, learn something new, and to follow this. Of course, it does require self-discipline. So, you know, like step by step, we all can come to that point. But I think it's going to be interesting to see, let's say remote work is here to stay for a while, like, but then after this, some of the employers maybe didn't trust their employees that they can be capable of finishing all the tasks.
Right.
And now when they see that that is possible, even though they are working from home, especially now when everybody's, you know, like looking where to cut costs, maybe in the future we're not going to need these large office spaces. It's going to be changes in that regard. And another interesting thing that I found out, and as well like I heard, you know, like from my as well like friends and colleagues and people from the industry, that actually people tend to take less sick days leave when they are working from home.
Right.
So that's another thing as well, like to explore, but it's really, you know, like on us how we organize ourselves, and then to have an open and efficient communication with our employers if we do experience certain issues, how those can be solved and how we can help and support each other in this process for the benefit of both sides.
Right. David, how are you coping up with this transition?
So, you know, one of the tips they give to make this easier is to have a routine. And I'm a very routine person. My day starts very early. And I just noticed I've got like the bags under my eyes, which maybe means my day starts too early. But it does start very early. So I work out early in the morning. You know, I have a very set number of things I want to get done during the day. And then my day usually ends more or less at the same time, right? And I think it makes it difficult because the days do tend to blur together. But I think just my temperament makes it to where I deal with it a little better. And as Sofija was saying, you know, my wife and I are very lucky. We have no children. We both still have our jobs. So, I mean, I think a lot of the stress that everyone is feeling, I don't have. And I'm very fortunate in that regard. But I will say, just generally speaking, I have this attitude towards life, which is that, you know, you can choose how you react to certain things, but you're not always going to get to pick your circumstances. And so maybe that makes me a pessimist. I just kind of look at this like, well, I mean, there's nothing I can do about COVID, because if there were, I mean, if I could just wave my magic wand, I'd make it go away, but I can't. And so I just sort of tell myself every day, like, look, this is how it is. You've got some good things going for you. Hopefully, if you do your best, you might come out of this better off than you were before, and just kind of deal with it that way. So I completely understand that everyone's going to feel differently, but without trying to push my behavior and attitude on the people on this call, I would absolutely try and say that take this as practice, because you're not always going to choose what happens to you. So just get into the habit of saying, right, I can't control what's happening to me. I'm going to do the best I can. If things get difficult, by all means, take a break. I mean, we're not talking about running ourselves into the ground, but get into the habit of saying, this is what's happening. Acknowledge what it is that you're feeling and do the best you can to deal with it. with that afterwards. And that's what's helping. But one more thing I'll add, taking a break is key. I just have been running quite full speed the last couple weeks because clients want things and you get asked to contribute. And sometimes I just feel tired. And, I just say, look, I'm going to sit down for 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Maybe I don't get as much done one afternoon, but that's okay because I worked really hard the next day. And then tomorrow I will be fresh and ready to go. So I am fully at peace with the idea of taking breaks whenever you can, because it's not possible to run at 100 miles per hour all the time. It's just not. That will lead to disappointment and burnout.
Right, David. Also, we see there's a lot of noise regarding this whole conundrum and, the situation. What do you think the oil and gas professionals should focus on right now?
In terms of skills or knowledge or tools or kind of all of the above?
You can talk about all of them.
Okay. I think that one thing I have noticed a lot in oil and gas is and maybe this is the same in other industries like software, I don't know, but there's this tendency to say, I'm really good at what I do, and so that should be enough, right? Like, I'm a fantastic geologist, that's all I need to focus on. Or I've got 20 years in geology, that's all I need to focus on. But then you end up in a situation, when I see this all the time on LinkedIn, people say, I've just been laid off from my current job as a reservoir engineer. Let me know if there's reservoir engineering opportunities out there. That makes no sense. If the whole industry is in a downturn and you were told that your company doesn't need reservoir engineers, what's to say that there's going to be spots for every laid off reservoir engineer afterwards, right? It makes no sense. So I think what you should be focusing on is absolutely build knowledge in your discipline. That's not what I'm saying, but recognize too that in order to grow your career in the same place or have opportunities elsewhere, you have to you have to broaden your skill set. So if you are not so technical, take a technical short course. If you're an engineer and you've never really learned how to program, learn how to program. Write a few blog posts. I think really right now, because things in oil and gas are not great, and they will not be for the next couple of years. If you cannot focus on doing more of what you're already doing if that is not getting the result that you want. So if you're presenting yourself as a reservoir engineer and you're not getting hired, that is a signal to do something else. So try presenting yourself as a reservoir engineer who can automate a lot of tasks and go quicker, or a reservoir engineer who writes the best proposals and business cases possible. So right now, the more you can cross-train, the better off you are. If you spent 4 years learning oil and gas and petroleum engineering, don't spend this time learning more about that. You know that. It's proven you have the degree, you're good. Learn something else so you can solve a much broader array of problems when you're out there looking for jobs.
Right. Which actually brings me to my next question. There are so many people who have suffered serious setback during this time, and they might be thinking that, what would you say? Is it a good time to consider a different career path?
That's a question that, gets asked a lot, honestly. Every time a downturn happens, it's should we get into oil and gas? And to be honest, I mean, look, in 50 years, I hope to be retired. So I guess come talk to me then. But what I will tell you is this, again, going back to my attitude with COVID, I'm not entitled to anything. I mean, I made some bets in terms of my skill set because I have a graduate degree in petroleum engineering. On paper, it's what I know, but I fully accept that tomorrow I could be laid off as well, and there may never be a job in oil and gas for me. I mean, that's just the case. I'm not entitled to anything anywhere. So I do the best I can to build my skill sets on other things. So I have taught myself how to program. I've put business cases together. I look at it to where I will do the best I can in whatever opportunity I have and then be very pragmatic. So it's very possible, and it's a valid choice, that people on this webinar or watching afterwards have these oil and gas degrees, and maybe just out of choice or by necessity, they end up somewhere else, like, tech or industry or, even something totally different, fashion, design, whatever, right? I think the important thing is not to get too hung up on the career. I mean, no one knows. I couldn't have imagined where I am now when I graduated school, not even close. And so I think it's just very important to focus on what feels right for me at this moment, and then just take things as they come along. But to try and forecast 50 years into the future now for your career, I think it's going to cause you to make decisions that you might regret later. So just look at what you want now take what feels right at the moment, focus on doing your best, and then repeat that, the next time some new challenge comes along.
That's very helpful. Sofija, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I agree with David. Like, definitely we need to, you need to identify what other skills you can learn besides the ones that, that you are graduating in. And that's really important now, and it's going to be important in the future to enhance, your CV and your capabilities. But when we talk about oil and gas industry, we are going through energy transition. So, today, oil and gas companies might look completely different tomorrow because they're expanding their assets into renewables, decarbonization technologies, data-driven consumer products and services. So there is a lot as well for everyone to learn. And we have in the industry, examples from Shell, from BP, saying that they made announcements that they are committing themselves to be carbon neutral by 2050. We have Petroleum Development Oman as well, with their initiative and expansion into renewables. So the choice, if we are talking about, unless, let's say, you're a chemical engineer, so you can work in cosmetics industry as well, but the choice is not that black and white anymore, because whoever gets in the industry, you cannot get away from this energy transition. So that's why, as David was mentioning, it's important to identify and see how you can upscale yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
David, heading over to you, how do you think the employers will recover from this pandemic?
Ooh, that's a great question. So you posted an interview that I'd done with Energy Dais, I guess a couple weeks ago now. And I think that there is going to be a shift towards more with less. I mean, that's always the case. Let's do more with less. And in fact, this is a question I'm just answering now in the chat box. I think there will be much, much more flexibility from the employee. Even, CEO of my company has said, I was not convinced about, I'm not convinced about remote working. When he said, okay, we're shutting this down, people are going to remote work, he said, I need productivity to stay high. I'm going to be monitoring that. And now I think he's actually seeing that productivity is higher than he ever imagined because of what Sofija is saying. Yeah, you can just work all the time, right? So I think this is causing, it's a forced test of a lot of assumptions people may have had before. So they are going to be much more flexible in how they hire and how they let their employees work. I think one point I made with regards to oil and gas specifically is that the case, now the burden is actually on a lot of these oil and gas companies, because whereas before COVID, smart, bright people still had options, right? You can go into consulting, you can go into other engineering firms, you can try entrepreneurship. Now it's okay, there's energy transition, there's climate change. Oh, and by the way, there's a 30% drop in oil and gas demand. So who's going to buy the product that we're selling? What career could there possibly be for me if demand is dropped so suddenly and doesn't come back? So I think from companies' point of view, they're going to have in the short term a pick of professionals, which fine, it's great for them. But over the long term, those who have actually done the work to set themselves apart, build up their skill sets, and have true value to offer to companies, in oil and gas specifically, I think they're going to find they might have either more choices or more perks, simply because I think the case from the operator side becomes much harder and harder to make as we move farther along the energy transition, and as people, I think, as they will learn to make do with less in terms of travel or whatever else requires oil and gas demand.
Right. And even during the interview, you talked a lot about getting back to the graduate school. So would you elaborate it for us?
Yeah, so that's also something I get asked about a lot. I guess if I could put this in bullet points. So I have 2 master's degrees, and look, I'm saying that because it's a fact, but I did it because I was at a point in my career when I really thought, honestly, that the more degrees I had, the more likely I'd be to become CEO. And that's just not how it works. It's a part of it, but it's not all of it. So what I would absolutely say is, do not go back to graduate school just because you can't find a job and it's something to do. Here in the US, that can be ruinously expensive if you do that. So don't do that. Don't do it unless you have a clear plan of what you're going to use this degree for afterwards, right? So don't go back to be to get a graduate petroleum engineering degree if you already have a petroleum degree and it just seems like the right thing to do. So only do it if there is a clear return, if you have a plan to make a return on that. And if you're going to do it, I would say, if you've done all that analysis, do it as early as possible because it does get tougher. the farther along you go. Also, make the most of the network. That's the other important thing. It's not just what you learn. It's who you know. I've gotten, I think, probably my last 3 jobs as a result of the networking I did in school. That is almost as important as what you're learning. And that's why, the rankings of a school are important, but it's not really what they're teaching. It's because you're exposed to other very smart and bright people. So just to summarize, do it, but don't do it because it just feels like something to do, and make the most of the people you're studying with. That's almost as, if not more important than what they're actually teaching you in the classes.
Right. And considering how hard it is for everyone right now, Sofija, what is your message to the student community and to the younger generation seeking a career in the industry right now?
Well, I mean, you studied what you studied, and we talked already that it's extremely important to utilize tools that you have, social media, connections, expand connections, engage with other people, see what's happening. It's not necessarily like getting a job, but as well, like you might learn about some new ideas, about some new opportunities. Like many startups have come after the last crisis as well. So there are always opportunities, but I would say you really need to keep, like your mind calm and focused on them, rather than, like feeling depressed or anxious about what your future holds. So it's like day by day, you're taking a step and focus on what really matters. Like finishing your university, and as well like getting out there and trying to find a job. Maybe it's not going to be oil and gas at the moment, it might be construction industry, but as well, like be flexible on that. As I said, like there are many opportunities, it might not be the one that you wanted in the first place, but if you don't try, you really don't know like where it can bring you.
Right. David, would you like to wrap this up for us, and then we can take up some questions from the audience?
Yeah. So look, I think that let's just going back to what I said earlier. Things are absolutely down right now, but people are hiring. I see it on LinkedIn every day. People are being hired. So what I would do as a new graduate is get myself in the mindset of thinking of myself as a business, identifying what the problems are out there, how I can solve them, and how I can put myself in front of the people that make the decisions. If you can do that, it will be hard at first, but the more you do it, the easier it becomes, and you will find that good things will happen to you. But just having a systematic approach and a plan is gonna trump putting resumes out there every single time. So just being systematic, taking a break when you need to, and not getting discouraged, and things will work out. You will find a job. You will not be jobless for the next 50 years. You will find something. It's just a matter of getting a process in place that works for you, and just being diligent, basically.
Right. Thank you so much, David. And Sofija, would you like to say something?
No, it's just like when we think about this, like we are experiencing it for the first time. It's on our, like on mental health as well. Like we have been feeling, experiencing different kind of feelings. And, like it is important to be, like to stay calm and focused in these situations, and to put in your effort and energy into something that really matters. But to think about this as well, like it's temporary. Like we are still having questions like what is the effective treatment, when we're going to have a vaccine, and eventually, like these things will go away. We'll go back, like we'll need to adapt. That's the key as well, like to adapt to this new reality, and hopefully we're going to go back where we were before. Like that we're able to travel and to go and see our friends, and as well like on business meetings. But we have so much information and knowledge available to us more than ever in the history. So it's like really use this time, because maybe in the future we'll say like, oh my God, we had so much time when this pandemic happened, and then in the future it's not going to be the case. Like we're going to be busy and everything. So really utilize this time and to work in your favor.
Right. So I think there's a very interesting question here in the chat section. Now, what we see before us is a pre-COVID era and a post-COVID era. How do you think work life will be transformed after this crisis? How do you see it changing?
Yes, Sofija, go ahead.
No, I didn't. So how we think work life will change?
Yes. How will work life be post-COVID, basically?
Well, like these are some of the topics that, like what we are seeing, that maybe employers will be more open for certain positions that can be done, like some work that can be done actually from home. So they might think as well, like to save some money on this renting the space for the office. But definitely, like energy workers have been considered essential. So they still continue working in the field, in the facilities and plants. But now definitely there is more caution on that. So everybody's advocating to have regular testing of these workers. So because now if someone tests positive, then you need to evacuate all group of people, and you need to be ready to have a group of people to replace them. So that's challenging from organizational side in the companies. So they really have to be careful in that. And as I said, considering, like that we are doing this for the first time, so it's quite new. And that's why the best practices have to be shared so everybody learns and doesn't make same mistakes. But it's about, like it's hard to predict how it's going to evolve. But there might be some, like mix between, like working from home and like working in the office for who, like it's not possible for everyone. But definitely there will be changes, and there will be changes as well, like in hiring side. So we're going to do more like video interviews. Maybe you guys should start practicing on your, like to create your CV in a video format. Why not? Like maybe that's something that's going to be required. We have been doing that at the Energy Year, even in the past before this crisis.
Right.
Yeah, I've got so on that point, Sofija, I've got a buddy a couple years back who made a video CV that actually got over 100,000 views, I think. So I'll share it with Garima, and she can share it with the team because it was very well done. But I think in terms of changes, again, going back to identification of problems, like I think to myself, if I had to solve problems today, what would I look at? I think that there is, like Sofija was saying, big change towards remote working. I bet you there's an entire field of consultants now who are pitching how to organize that most efficiently, like what tools to use, what the savings are. So helping companies more efficiently organize their remote learning or their remote working, that's one. I think the next big trend we're going to see is the insourcing of supply chains. So now, there's huge talk of, all the masks coming from China and all these supplies being manufactured elsewhere. I think there's going to be a big push towards manufacturing internally. So think about what that means for oil and gas. I mean, what gets built for oil and gas? Where is that manufactured? Is that going to be staying offshore, or is it coming onshore? If it's coming onshore, there's a huge amount of problems that can be solved in that. So that's the second thing, is the reshoring of goods and services and manufacturing. So again, huge opportunities, right? Manufacturing engineers, planning engineers, all of that. I think the third trend to take a look at is just going to be focused on demand. And I think that's something that no one has really understood yet. So in the US, cruise industry almost gone. No one's flying anymore, and that's globally. So does that come back? And if not, what does that mean for all of the jobs that are associated with that? What does that mean for everything feeding those jobs? And so I think just that lower demand is going to be a challenge. But low demand for one thing might mean higher demand elsewhere. And so the person that understands that and can capitalize on it will be better off. But just in those three things, think of the myriad of problems that are there to be solved. And they're all there to be solved by maybe some of the people on this call. So huge opportunities from this.
Right. And there's a question asking, which stream do you think would be most affected among upstream, midstream, and downstream? David, I think you can help us with that.
Hard to say because I have no data for this. Just off the top of my head, I think exploration is down globally. So CapEx budgets have been slashed just because the world is awash in oil. There's just so much of it now. So upstream is going to be hard hit. I can't see the pipelines not being full at this point. In fact, we had to, in the US a couple weeks ago, oil prices went negative because people had to be paid to take their oil away. And I think the refiners must be at capacity, but even the refiners aren't shielded because even though they're getting their feedstock at very low prices, the demand for all their chemicals and plastics, that is quite down now as well. So if you said pick one that's going to be the hardest hit, I'd say for now it's upstream. But I also would caution people on this call who may have been petroleum engineers from saying, right, I'm going to go be a downstream guy, because the skill sets are very different. That doesn't just happen once in a while, right? So I think that's where it goes to what I was saying earlier, which is don't just kind of always be back and forth based on what looks good now. Really think about what it is that you want at the moment, stick to that, and then slowly, as you learn more, make your your next pivot or your next jump down the line afterwards.
Right. And I think we can take up the last question now. If a similar situation occurs in future, what strategy would you suggest?
So first of all is don't wait until it happens again to get ready for it. I have been for the last year, really focusing on what I want and don't want. So, this house is rented. I sold my last place. My wife and I have one car. You might be able to see in the background, I've been teaching myself some guitar there. So I focus on that. I think that is all important. It's been a huge burden off of my shoulders to have less stuff and focus on the things that I like. So I think I always say that when people ask me my wife and I talk what insurance should we get or do we need insurance? If people could forecast accidents, there'd be no such thing as an accident. It wouldn't happen. So I think the most important thing is not to ask, how would I react the next time something comes around? What you should be telling yourself is something will happen. So how can I prepare myself now so that I am less liable to be affected by that down the line? So being very proactive instead of being reactive.
Right. Sofija, one last question for you. How can one transform oneself from oil and gas to energy professional? Because the whole energy dynamics is changing right now. And what do you think about this one?
Well, we are going, as we talked about it, through energy transition. And there are going to be, and many companies, for example, that we have been meeting over years for the interviews, we would be meeting with the oil and gas companies. But then over the time, those companies have changed position from oil and gas company to energy company. We are seeing oilfield services companies seeing themselves as technology companies. So transition is happening, and then there are certain skills for the employees that they need to gain. And, that they need to, first of all, identify and gain that will serve them better. Because as I said, it's going to be quite difficult in the future, to distinguish and to run away from this energy transition, because the whole industry is going through this transformation.
Right. I think we have discussed some very important points here. We have discussed personal branding, social media presence, how important is networking in the oil and gas industry, and also how we move forward from this situation. And I firmly believe that our audience will gain a lot from this discussion. And all the other questions I would definitely like to ask you both sometime later, and then we can share your thoughts with them, because it's not possible to answer everything at this point of time. And it has been wonderful speaking with both of you. Thank you so much for doing this for us. It means a lot. And also to our audience, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your questions. And we have had quite an engaging session. And this video will also be released on YouTube. So whoever missed the webinar at this point of time, they can watch it later. There's no problem with that. And also do check the website called user.energydais.com. It's a dedicated job portal, and it is for students who want to pursue a career in oil and gas. Please don't miss out on that. And thank you once again, Sofija and David. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you all so much. Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
Thank you, Garima.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.